three basic ways I use to remove solder, and it depends on the application, such as surface mount devices. I'll always use solder wick. It doesn't come pre-cut like this. I cut this up because you get it in rolls of 1.5 meters and 10 meters, and if you think you've got braided copper 1.5 or 10 meters in length, it's going to be pulling some thermal mass away from what you're trying to do. So I cut this up and just use reverse tweezers, bit of flux, and then the soldering iron. Comes in a few different widths as well, but this is really good stuff for the surface mount. Then we have cheap and cheerful solder pump. There's this thing as well, which is basically a solder iron and a solder pump in one. I'll just put them to a side, and I'll show you how I use this stuff. I've got this board just to give you an example of how this wick actually works and how effective it is. Before we hit it with the heat, it is best if you give it a good old spritz of the flux. That really does help wick it up. Make sure you've got your soldering iron on, probably a tad bit more higher than what you would normally, and don't put on thin tips like needle nose tips. You need a good area in order to get the coverage you need. So we've got the 4 solder blobs that we'll get rid of. You've got to keep moving the solder wick as well, because you are trying to wick it up into the different areas and open up the wick. And if we let's concentrate for 5 seconds to do this. I mean, just that first swipe, that's pretty much got rid of what we needed. And that's basically how the wick takes off the solder. That's for surface mount devices, not through holes. The next tool are these cheap and cheerful solder suckers. Let me just turn the spotlights off. That'll probably give a better picture. They work to a degree, fine. They do have a hard plastic end, which will eventually melt, but usually with these things you do get quite a few different tips with them. There is another one that's on the market at the moment, which is a really nice quality one. I think it's an engineer from Japan, and that uses a silicon tip, so you can like squash the silicon over your solder iron because it won't melt. But these are used for through hole devices. I've just put this capacitor through this board just to give you an idea. I mean, it's been years since I've used these things. Most of the stuff I do is with solder wick, but just for the purpose of the demonstration, once again, get your solder iron. You don't want to be using thin tips. Heat up one of the legs and then zap it. Come around this way. And that has taken off pretty much most of the solder. As I said, it's not perfect, but that's essentially what the solder sucker is about. And finally, onto this contraption. I can't even remember how much I paid for this. I don't even think it was that much, to be honest, but I got it from China. And as you tend to with electronics from China, you hope that safety is sort of okay, but it's a bit terrifying when you do get it smoking out of bits or areas that you're not really sure what's going on there, but never mind. Right, okay, it is a solder sucker, and the end here does heat up, as you can see by the smoke. It does have a hole in the center, so if you do have a through component, back to this little thing, I've resoldered the capacitor back onto this board. What you can do, which is really handy, if the legs are straight or if they bend or whatever, you can put that over, straighten it, go down, and then press the button. And it does actually work very well. But again, I'm not quite sure of the safety aspect of these things, so I'll push down the plunger and hope that this doesn't like spray all over my face. And then once it's over the area, and that's actually done quite a good job. So crank it again over the leg. And look at that, that's not bad at all. As I said though, not quite sure about the safety aspects of that particular one. But if you're brave enough, it's up to you whether you try it or not. But those are 3 ways. I'll show you the picture of the Japanese engineered solder pump, because I do think I'm going to end up getting one. They are a bit more money than the old cheap things like these. I mean, these you can get for a few quid off eBay with spare tips. But the engineer one, it's a silicon tip, so you can squash it right over the solder tip and it won't melt because it's silicon, and it is very well made. So I do think I'll be getting one, and I'll do a review once I've got it. But those are the 3 ways that I use.